Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming or for coming back. Today I am very excited to show you how to make one of my favorite breakfast pastries, and that is turnovers. Now these are just really fantastic for breakfast, and I am going to show you 4 different flavors, but you can swap this out for pretty much any fruit that you can think of, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So all of the ingredients and measurements are listed down below, and we can get started. And a quick note, I am going to show you how to make the filling all the way through first and the pastry all the way through second, but in reality you would probably want to do these at the same time or somewhere in there. I'm just doing this so that it's a little bit clearer what is going on for me and for you. So as I said, we are going to start with the filling. I am going to be making these in 4 different flavors: strawberry, apple, blueberry, and mixed berry, but you can swap out any different flavor. And we are going to start by prepping our fruit. Now the prep is going to change for your different fruits, so if you want to make it really easy on yourself, then get something that you just have to take out of its frozen fruit bag or wash off. If you have something larger like apples and strawberries, then you will have to cut them up into small pieces just to get them to cook a little bit faster and a little bit more evenly. Now for each of these fruits, we are going to be adding sugar and water before we start cooking them, and you are going to put your filling onto heat at a relatively high heat to get it to come to a boil, and then you're going to cover it up with a lid and just let it cook in its own sort of liquid until it is nice and soft. And then you're going to remove the lid and keep cooking until most of the moisture is gone, either evaporated or reduced. And this is going to change a lot depending on your fruit. Obviously something like an apple isn't going to have as much excess moisture as something like a blueberry, so you might not have to do the next step with something like an apple, like I didn't have to. So for the wetter fruits, it is going to be a little bit difficult to cook it all the way off in the stove, so I went ahead and transferred this onto a silpat and put it in the oven at 300 degrees to cook down. You're going to want to stir this every once in a while just to make sure you don't burn the edges, and we are going to keep on cooking that until it is a very, very thick filling. We want to end with a very thick concentrated filling because obviously there is a limited amount of filling that we can get into our turnovers, so we want the things that are in there to taste as strong and flavorful as possible. A quick note, if you don't have a silpat, you can keep cooking this on the stove in its pot. You will just have to watch it somewhat carefully to make sure it doesn't burn. I transferred mine onto a silpat because I was cooking 3 at once, so it was a little bit easier to monitor in the oven. But if you don't have a silpat, I would suggest leaving it in the pot to cook instead of putting it on a tray with no silpat, because it'll get a little bit sticky later on. So you know that your filling is done when it is nice and thick, and any liquid that is in there is a really thick syrup similar to the consistency of cornstarch. Nope, the consistency of corn syrup. So after it is all cooked, we are going to add a splash of lemon juice to each of our fillings to brighten up the flavor a little bit, and to the apple we are also going to add the tiniest pinch of cinnamon and the tiniest pinch of nutmeg. Now that our fillings are done, we can set them aside to cool while working on our pastry. So for the pastry, in a large bowl, you're going to add your flour, sugar, and salt. Go ahead and give it a nice whisk together until completely combined, and then we're going to add our butter. Now, as with many recipes that I've done, this butter is already cubed into nice small pieces because we are going to rub in our butter. Now you're going to want to get this to pretty small pieces. We're not looking for big chunks of butter here. You want sort of really small flaky bits, kind of smaller than a pea. Now that our butter is all added in, we are going to add our water. Now this is ice water to keep down the temperature of the dough and keep our butter nice and cool. And you're just going to add this by eye. There is no measurement, so just add it a little bit at a time while stirring with a spoon or a spatula until it looks like there is enough moisture in there that you can form a nice dough with no dry spots. Go ahead and finish it off by kneading it in the bowl just a little bit by hand, and then we're going to wrap it up in plastic wrap to chill in the fridge. Now, after wrapping this in plastic, I do like to roll it out within the plastic with my rolling pin. This just helps to make sure that you have a nice even rectangle and to make sure that you now have no dry spots. As well, it makes sure that you have a nice even layer of pastry that will cool at the same rate. Now this is going into the fridge for 2 hours minimum to chill until we roll it out again. 2 hours later, wow, that was so fast, we are going to roll out our pastry. So we want this to be rolled out in a relatively even square, and you want it to be about 1/4 inch thick before we fold it up. We are going to fold this in 4 pieces so that we end up with 4 layers of pastry, and then we are going to wrap it again and put it in the fridge, and then an hour later we are going to go through the exact same process of rolling it out into a 1/4 inch thick square, folding it in 4 pieces, and then refrigerating it again for an hour. We are doing all these folds in the pastry so that we end up with a flakier pie dough. This is almost like a poor man's puff pastry. By rolling it out and folding it all these times, we end up with 16 different layers of pie dough that will separate a little bit when we bake them, and we'll have a nice, really flaky turnover in the end. So once your dough is all folded and all nice and chilled, we can roll it out for the last time into a large square about 1/4 inch thick. Now this recipe should make 16 turnovers for you, and we are going to sort of divide this out into a 16 inch by 16 inch grid made up of 4 inch turnovers. So you want your dough to be about a 16 inch square. It can be a little larger, but try not to get it a little smaller because then you'll get less turnovers. So after your dough is all rolled out, we are going to mark out a grid that I will show you here to make it a little bit easier to understand how we are going to fill our turnovers. And then you can go ahead and mark out your grid and trim off the excess because we won't be needing those. Now a quick tip, don't throw away your excess pastry. You worked really hard on that and you can still eat it. If you cut this up into small squares, then you can egg wash it and dip it in a little bit of cinnamon sugar and bake it in the oven at 350 degrees until golden, and you end up with a really nice cinnamon sugar sort of pie crust cookie. I actually like these so much. They are so tasty. If you ever have extra pastry, do not throw it out because you can still use it. So for the fillings, you're going to go ahead and add them. Each of these fillings that I made makes 4 different turnovers. I am going to list them as making 16 down below. So if you are making turnovers and you want to make 16 of one flavor, then use the recipe. But if you want to make more than one, you are going to have to cut it in half or cut it in quarters, because I don't imagine that too many people will be making all 4 flavors at the same time. After your filling is all divided out, go ahead and egg wash between each little filling pocket, and then we're going to fold the top half of our pastry square over the bottom half. Now I know that traditionally turnovers are made because you turn one half of the dough over the other half of the filling. I didn't want to make it this way because I found that it was just a little bit more efficient, and you were also able to get a little more filling in if you made it with 3 cut sides. Feel free to make it with a full edge if you want. I don't even know what to call that, but feel free to make it with a folded over edge if you want, but I just found this to be a little bit easier. I'm really sorry if you are dedicated to the folded edge of the turnover. So once your turnovers are all covered, get to sealing up your turnovers. Now you want to seal these really carefully because we don't want any filling spilling out our sides. I found that it was really helpful to have something that I could really seal the pastry to the other half with. I had this nice thin dowel If you just use your hands or a wooden spoon or something like that, just make sure you get a really tight seal. You also want to work from the inside to the outside so that you don't have any air pockets trapped inside your turnovers, because that will make it a lot harder to seal, and it'll also make them more likely to burst in the oven. Once your turnovers are all nicely sealed, go ahead and cut them apart. I was using a wheel, but a knife will work just fine, and then transfer these onto a parchment lined tray about an inch apart. Now for the last time, these are going into the fridge to chill before baking. We really just want these to firm up so that they don't act out when they're in the oven. Take these out after 30 to 45 minutes when they've had enough time to chill and get nice and firm again, and then we are going to egg wash and sprinkle them with a little bit of coarse sugar. This will just add a really nice glossy top to your pastry, as well as add a little bit of extra sugar because I know everybody wants that. Now the final thing you need to do before putting these into the oven is dock them. So just using a fork, I went ahead and put a few little holes in the top of my pastry. This will just allow steam to escape while they are baking so that, again, you don't have anything leaking out the sides of your turnover. Now your turnovers are finally ready to go into the oven. We are putting these in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to cook them until they are a really deep golden brown on top as well as on the bottom. Once your turnovers are out of the oven, you can enjoy them straight away. I'm not going to tell you that you have to wait for these to cool. I will say be careful because the filling can be quite hot, but these are really great to eat warm. They are beautiful with all their flaky layers, and I really would love to see someone make this with another flavor. I'm thinking a peach turnover or a raspberry turnover would be just so fantastic. And I love these so much, so I hope you love them too if you make them. So thank you for watching. I will see you next time.